feel free to vent as best you can in that fashion. So this is the Saints Insider Postgame Show. We're brought to you by Tulane Doctors, and we appreciate them sponsoring us on the road this year and at home for the postgame shows all year long. Saints fall to 5-6. Falcons also 5-6. I guess as we've said 10 times this year, that's the saving grace. Saints are still tied for first place. They are behind the Falcons via tiebreaker, of course, because of this game. And then even if the Saints were to win the return trip, which is week 18 at the Superdome, Falcons still a huge leg up in that division race. We'll talk more about that, but they have a 3-0 division record in the NFC South now. So the Saints are to the point where they probably have to finish in front of the Falcons in order to win the division now. And they're tied with just 6 games to play. We'll rehash this one, go through some of the stats. We'll also get visits, post-locker room access from beat writers Luke Johnson and Matthew Paris, and also Times-Picayune columnist Rod Walker is here with me. And we'll talk to them and get their reactions and see what the Saints' reactions were to this one. So Falcons win it 24-15. Get those comments and questions in. We're going to take a quick break after this word from Tulane Doctors, and we'll be back with more Saints Insider Postgame Show after this.
We are Tulane Doctors. Physicians and scientists working side by side to advance academic medicine. We give our community access to the best possible medical remedies, developing state-of-the-art treatments to improve quality of life, address public health crises, and cure disease. All in passionate pursuit of our mission to provide inspired patient care for generations to come. Tulane Doctors. The future of medicine is here.
Welcome back to the Saints Insider Postgame Show live here in Atlanta. Saints lose to the Falcons 24-15. This season's postgame coverage is brought to you by Tulane Doctors. When it comes to healthcare, choose a partner that sets the standard. Tulane Doctors are bringing the medicine of tomorrow to the Gulf South today. Find your physician at TulaneDoctors.com. So from one team, Tulane, that finds a way to win every week, to another one, the Saints, who just can't seem to get it done with any consistency at all. And that was really the story of today. I mean, the Saints are down 14-12 at halftime, or 14-9 at halftime, even after the just crippling pick six Derek Carr throws. I thought Derek Carr played pretty well today outside of that one pass. But that, I mean, you don't get to erase that. That's kind of a, other than that, Mrs. Lincoln, how was the play moment? He forces the ball into double coverage, does not see the safety. Jesse Bates bearing down on the slant pattern, tried to squeeze it in there, trying to make a play. Jesse Bates jumps the route, and just a clear path up this sideline that we're standing on right now for a 92-yard pick six. And instead of, the Saints were up 3-0 at the time. They'd really dominated the game to that point. Instead of driving down for a 10-0 lead or even a 6-0 lead based on how they played, and that pass probably was never going to be completed. Okay, 6-0. That's a heck of a lot better than being down 7-3. Which they were after that. Saints then got another Blake Grupe field goal to make it 7-6. But then the Falcons, who really only put together 2 good drives this entire game, but they got touchdowns out of both of them, and that was the difference. They get 1 touchdown there, make it 14-6. I'll actually give the Falcons 3 good drives. They had another one that ended in their own interception. Tyrann Mathieu had an interception right before halftime for the Saints to keep it 14-9 going into the locker room. And so I think the Saints still have a chance. They get a stop out of the locker room. They get another field goal. Again, you'd like touchdowns, but it's 14-12, and you don't feel terrible about where you're at in that situation. But then just the other crippling play in this game, Saints driving down, trailing 14-12, just gashing the Atlanta Falcons defense on the ground. And Taysom Hill, a man who has not fumbled in 3 years, and it's been since December of 2020 since he lost a fumble. He fumbles right as he crosses the 10-yard line. Falcons recover. They go down. And at that point, get a touchdown, make it 21-12, a long again, about a 90-yard drive, and that really sealed the deal. The Saints did get a field goal, got back within 6 points, but the Falcons, Young Hoku, kicks a field goal at the end to make it a 2-possession game, less than 2 minutes to go, and that was pretty much all she wrote. So 24-15, the Falcons win. Of course, the other storyline today that we want to talk about is Saints injuries, and we don't get a ton of game day updates. We'll see what Luke and Matt and Rod have for us as they exit the locker room today, but really just a tough one for the Saints, and the injuries did not make that any easier. Chris Olave leaves the game with a concussion. That's typically not an injury that guys recover from and return in 1 week. That's usually a 2-week injury, so I would expect that. Then you've got the Rashid Shaheed, number 2 receiver. He left with a thigh injury in the first half. At first, it was reported as a hamstring. They officially said a thigh injury, so I don't know if that's a quad. I don't know what's going on there. But Rashid Shaheed did not return. Saints receiving core, Michael Thomas, of course, already on IR, so their receiving core was left with, like, A.T. Perry was the number 1 receiver out there. Lynn Bowden made some plays. He was out there. Keith Kirkwood was playing. I mean, Saints have Marquez Callaway on the practice squad. They can elevate him for next week against the Lions, assuming those guys are not returning. But you're looking at a team that's really decimated by injury. Offensive line injuries. Ryan Ramczyk left the game, did not return. Eric McCoy did leave. He did return. He left the game for a few plays, had his shoulder looked at, and then he did return. So they got McCoy back. But you're talking about down your right tackle and down a couple of receivers at the end of the game for the Saints. So that's the other factor here. Seeing some comments here, keep them coming in. Typical Saints. Team should be sponsored by a moving company. Coaches should all need one. Where is the press conference? The press conference is streaming. The Saints have that on their website, but probably almost over by now. We'll be back with Luke and Rod and Matt here in a few minutes to tell us what the Saints said. Yeah, Carr gets in the red zone 5 times. They settle for 3 points. Hire Allen now. I assume that means fire Allen now. What's it going to take for Allen to lose his job? Yeah, I don't think they're firing Dennis Allen this year. I really don't. I mean, unless you're talking about 6 more losses to end the year and the Saints somehow go 5-12, which I don't think is going to happen unless the team just quits on him. I don't think they're firing Dennis Allen. This is kind of a 2-year. They let him go get Derek Carr. He's, for salary cap reasons, Derek Carr is going to be this team's quarterback when healthy for the rest of this season and for next season. And that means Dennis Allen's going to get to kind of see what he can do for the rest of this season and next season. I don't think there are not those big changes on the horizon. It's not the way the Saints operate. We'll ask Luke and Rod and Matt if they feel differently, but that's the reality of the situation. Is the Saints are probably just going to be basically with this roster through the 2024 season and see where they can get with it. And right now they show flashes of it being a pretty good team from time to time, but it's just not enough. And another one today, they lose 24-15 to the Atlanta Falcons. Tampa Bay Buccaneers also lost today to the Indianapolis Colts. That one was 27-20. And so the Bucs fall to 4-7. I think we have the NFC South standings here we can show. And the Falcons and Saints tied for first at 5-6. The Falcons do own the tiebreaker, though. They had the head-to-head meeting, and now they have a much better division record, a 2-game lead in the division. So the only way the Saints would win this division in a tie is if they would have to beat the Falcons in Week 18. They would also have to gain a game in the division somewhere else on the Falcons. That means they beat the Bucs and Panthers in the meantime, and the Falcons lose at least one of those games and then lose to the Saints. Then the Saints could talk about tiebreaker. But at this point, with 6 games left, Saints are probably going to have to be better than the Falcons. That means you have to be even with them through the next 5 weeks. You go into Week 18 with the same record, then you beat them at the Superdome. Saints could win the division that way. Of course, Tampa Bay still involved, just a game back. So it's it's a tough situation. And today really would have put the Saints in the driver's seat, and they were in the driver's seat of this game, up 3-0, had a 1st and goal, throw the pick 6 on 3rd down, and all of a sudden you're down 7-3, and the Saints did not lead again for the rest of the afternoon. Got back within 1 point at 7-6, then got back within 2 points at 14-12, and had the ball again in the red zone, and Taysom Hill fumbles. So you just, And that one didn't even count as a red zone failure, by the way. Taysom Hill started the play outside the red zone, so it doesn't count as a red zone trip, even though he fumbled the ball inside the 10. And the Saints were just chunking off yardage at that point. If they can finish that drive with a touchdown, they go up, I guess, with the extra point, it'd be 19-15 or 19-14, excuse me. They go for 2, try to make it a 6-point game. But let's say it's 19-14. Falcons, Desmond Ridder when he was forced to throw, was not very good. But once the Saints fumbled that ball, Falcons were able to run the ball. And that was the other big thing, quite frankly. We'll get the stats up here, but the other problem was the Falcons just ran the ball almost at will on the Saints. They had 228 yards rushing, rushed the ball 41 times today, 5.6 yards per carry, 228 yards. And so when it came down to it, the Saints kicked a field goal to get down 21-15, had one more chance maybe to get the ball back, and if they could finally magically score that touchdown, win this game. But instead, the Falcons just bled the clock all the way down under 2 minutes and got in field goal range. Younghoe Koo's field goal makes it a 2-possession game, and the game effectively over at that point. Saints drove down and missed a long field goal. Blake Grupe's only miss of the day in 6 tries. And that was the official end. But even if he makes that, it's like 20 seconds left, and the Saints would have had to get an onside kick and basically been in Hail Mary mode, even if they recover the onside kick. So I don't know. It's all bad. Again, the Saints show flashes. They ran they really had one of their best days running. 28 carries, 148 yards, 5.3 yards per carry. That's healthy. You'll take that every day of the week. That was a positive. And 296 yards passing, not bad. You'll take that. 6 of 14 on third down. You'll take that. It's the turnovers. It's the red zone efficiency. So we'll take another quick break here. Saints Insider Postgame Show. Rod Walker right after the break with us, fresh from the Saints locker room to talk about this one.
We are Tulane doctors. Physicians and scientists working side by side to advance academic medicine. We give our community access to the best possible medical remedies, developing state-of-the-art treatments to improve quality of life, address public health crises, and cure disease. All in passionate pursuit of our mission to provide inspired patient care for generations to come. Tulane doctors. The future of medicine is here.
We're back on the Saints Insider Postgame Show live here from Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta. Zach Ewing joined by Rod Walker. And we're going to scoot over just a little bit here. We've got Luke Johnson and Matthew Paris also. Rod, coming from the Saints locker room, Saints lose another frustrating one. What was the level of frustration in that locker room?
It was frustration. I actually asked Alvin Kamara, is this the most frustrated he's been? And he said probably so. And this is kind of he's been in 7 years. And I think it's just a matter of, we've talked about how much talent this team has, and the same issues that have plagued them all season continue. And today it may have been as bad as being all season. 0 for 5 in the red zone is just not going to win. Blake Grupe attempted 6 field goals, made 5 of them, but if he's kicking 6 field goals, that's all you need to know about how bad today is going for him.
Yeah, you just can't have that. And it's funny because there were times at which, and this is a broken record too, but there are times at which you think, the Saints are playing pretty well and they look like they're trending toward winning this game. And then they would just come up with obviously the 2 crucial turnovers or a holding call or a missed tackle or something, and all of a sudden it all blows up.
Yeah, and the surprising thing is this is coming off of the bye week. We talked all week about how, they worked on some things in the bye week. This is them hitting the reset button and nothing's fixed. So, you're back at square one basically, and that's not where you thought this team would be today. And we know how important this game was as far as the NFC South standings. This is a chance for them to make some, maintain the lead, make a little ground, and they weren't able to do it. And it's laid right there in front of you. You can't take care of business. And
Yeah, it would have been. I think we had New York Times playoff predictors say their playoff chances are like 85% if they win this game, 49% if they lose. So the chance is still there, but it's gotten to the point where you just can't really trust this team. And another big issue, Rod, they couldn't stop the run today on defense. I mean, that was
surprising. I mean, Atlanta had 220-something yards, I think, rushing.
Yeah.
And at the end of the game, I mean, they just couldn't stop. They averaged like 6 yards a carry almost, 5.9, whatever it was. You didn't even know the Saints were going to get the ball back because they were just gashing them. I mean, it was pretty incredible because that's just something we haven't seen from this team. That was another one of the keys to the games, and we thought they'd be able to stop that. Desmond Ridder had some runs that, we talked about that all year with the mobile quarterback. So it's the same things that we've been talking about.
Yeah, it's the same thing over and over again. Any positive signs you take? The Saints were able to run the ball, probably their best rushing day of the year.
I thought they ran the ball really well. I think that would be a positive. I thought for the most part, I thought Blake Grupe was, he made his field goals.
Yeah.
I think some of the younger guys may have stepped up, but I didn't really see a whole lot of positive out of today. I mean, I think Lynn Bowden may have had a good couple of plays, but other than that, I didn't see a whole lot to be happy about, especially with Detroit Lions coming to town next week. They're coming off 2 losses, I think, maybe. I know they lost the other day, so.
And they have that mini bye too. They played on Thursday.
Yeah, so I mean, I can't see things going well. I don't see how the Saints can beat them, not with this team that we saw today.
Well, and the other thing is the injuries. Michael Thomas already on IR now. Chris Olave, concussion. Rashid Shaheed, a thigh injury. So the receiving core is decimated. And unfortunately for the Saints, I mean, they're in a position. They get 3 straight home games, but their back is really against the wall now.
Yeah, you had that one possession today where they had 4 different players to go out. Eric McCoy went out. Ramczyk went out. They got a sack right after Ramczyk went out because Landon Young came in, and I forgot who it was that got the sack, but he blew right past him and recorded the sack there. But, yeah, we talked all season about how healthy this team has been. In the past 2 games, it's been the total opposite. I mean, guys are heading to the locker room. Even Cam Jordan got hurt, which never happens. He never.
He's the Iron Man.
Yeah, he's the Iron Man. And, saw him in the locker room. He was limping a little bit. He has an injury with his shin. So, this team they're in a tough spot right now.
No doubt about it. Well, Rod, we thank you. You can read his column on NOLA.com and the Times-Picayune later tonight and tomorrow morning, and we'll let him hand off to, I think Luke Johnson's going to be next here. So, Rod, you want to make the handoff?
Should I let him fumble? Should I fumble the mic?
Yeah, well.
We're going to fumble the mic.
You need to try the Derek Carr fumble where it bounces right to
A.T. Perry.
Yeah, right to A.T. Perry. Here's Luke Johnson, Saints beat writer, fresh from the locker room. I mean, I didn't think the Saints could get more Saints, and then they went out and Saintsed all day today.
Yeah, that's the best way to put it, right? That first half especially, but really, I guess the entire game. But it felt just like a microcosm of the Saints season, where there was some really, really good stuff that gets you excited and kind of draws you in. And then they bat you over the head with the really, really bad stuff, and that kind of outweighs it. And still, there's still a chance somehow, right? Like it feels like there shouldn't be. And I think we're seeing today why. The Falcons did a lot of dumb stuff today too, right? And I think we're seeing why they're still technically in it, and there's still a flicker of hope left, and they're still rooting for everybody to be like, don't count us out yet. But it's really, really hard after today, because today just felt like the entire season wrapped up into one game. Really, especially with the red zone stuff, right?
Oh, I mean, and I was saying to Rod, one of those didn't even count as a red zone failure because Taysom Hill started the play outside the 20 and then fumbles at the 10. That was really the moment where it's just a facepalm. Like they just can't seem to get it all together.
Yeah, and to the Falcons' credit, like specifically Jesse Bates, he made 2 great plays. Derek Carr was telling us about the pick 6, and basically Jesse Bates just came off of his coverage to go make a play. So it's not like at all what they expected him to do on the play. He just showed some great instincts and made a really good play. And the same thing happened on Taysom's fumble, where he just made a great top-down punch on the ball as Taysom was falling down. That's obviously stuff you cannot have. You cannot have a pick 6 and a fumble inside the 10. Absolutely not, especially this team. But I think you do have to give them some credit for that. Especially Jesse Bates is a really, really good player for them.
Yeah, and the Saints, I think we talk about it all the time. There's so little margin in the NFL, and they're finding that out. they're learning that lesson over and over again this year, where you just can't make as many mistakes as they're making and expect to come up with these games.
Hey, here's the thing, man. They went 3-and-out on their opening drive, and then we're going to take the one play kneel out at the end of the first half out of this. Their next 7 drives, I think, went inside Atlanta's 35-yard line. And maybe even I can't remember where the last one ended up, but it was. I mean, like, you cannot come out of that type of game when you're moving the ball that consistently and you're constantly in the opponent's territory, deep in the opponent's territory, and you got 5 field goals to show for it. I mean, we could talk about thin margins all we want. The thin margins are them not making the plays they need to make. Like, that's really what it boils down to.
And you're probably right, because I say thin margins, but they could have won this game playing far from.
They could have blown them out today.
If they played well, it would have been like New England.
Yeah, I mean, they could have blown it, because then Atlanta's not able to stuff the ball down their throat for the second half, and they got to rely on Desmond Ridder, who we saw today why they don't want to rely on Desmond Ridder. He threw 2 bad picks. Tyrann Mathieu after the game is like, those were 2 gimmies. Like, I didn't do anything for him. Wow. So like that's the problem. This is why you can't mess these plays up the way they're doing it, because then you're feeding right into your opponent's strength there.
Well, and so big picture again. I know people don't want to hear this. They want to hear about Dennis Allen being fired. Dennis Allen's not going to be fired. The Saints are
right now.
No, they're still tied for first place. They still play the Falcons again. If they can play them even over the next 5 weeks, then that game in week 18 will be for the division title. And so there's still like a chance to correct this miraculously after all of this. But at some point, you just got to realize
we're 11 games.
Yeah,
into
it's they're not.
This is who they are. Yeah. This is who they are, and it's hard. Like, not only have they played a really weak schedule up to this point, right, and they still have some very winnable games down the stretch, right. But like, not only have they played a weak schedule up to this point, but they've been healthy, and then now all of a sudden they are not healthy. They were out there today with their number 4, 5, and 6 receivers as their top 3 receivers. Lynn Bowden, Keith Kirkwood, and A.T. Perry. That was their receiving core for much of this game. Marquez Callaway is not going to save things for him here. Like, they're in a bad spot, and they got a Lions team that's going to be motivated coming in the next week. I mean, it's still all there in front of them, and they can say all the right things, and they are saying all the right things, but like, they got to start doing the right things.
Let's talk about those injuries. Any sense to the severity of any of them? Obviously, no updates yet.
No, typically though, I mean, I would be astonished if Chris Olave is available for next week. And especially when you're talking about muscle injuries, which Dennis Allen said Rashid Shaheed is dealing with a quadriceps injury. He tried playing through it today, and he had to limp off the field, and he never had a chance coming back in. Yeah. So, like, I don't feel really good about his status either. And, I think we got to keep an eye out on Juwan Johnson, who, he was in the protocol for a little bit today. They checked him out, and he was allowed to return to the game. But, look, they are down some significant talent, and it's not the side of the ball you want to be down on.
Yep. For those calls for Dennis Allen's job, and I understand, look, it's an emotional time for fans. They're going to say these things. I want to reiterate something. He hasn't lost a locker room yet. At least it doesn't feel that way to us.
Yeah, I would agree with that. But everybody's frustrated. I think they know that they're too good to be in this position. And I think it's still fair to say. I think we can see their talent every week. We just got done talking about it. But at some point, if the results aren't there, like I don't know how he can hang on to that belief if it is indeed still intact.
Yeah,
because people might like him. I know for a fact Dennis Allen's a great football coach, but I mean, this is falling on his shoulders right now, because like these are the same problems that we keep seeing over and over and over again, and it is absolutely incumbent on him to fix it, and his job is probably on the line with this. Done these last 5 weeks or 6 weeks.
So there you have it. Dennis Allen's job on the line the last 6 weeks. Saints lose this one 24-15. We'll say goodbye to Luke and let Matthew Paris come in and take us home here. Here comes Matt. Saints lose at 24-15 in Atlanta. Matt, your impressions after visiting the Saints locker room?
Yeah, a lot of the same issues. Alvin Kamara kind of gave a sermon almost, spoke to reporters for almost 10 minutes and said this is the most frustrated he's ever been in his 7 years with the Saints. So things boiling. He was frustrated, but he wasn't angry. He wasn't, cursing or anything. But you could tell that a lot of these same issues are getting to him and frankly, the rest of the team.
Same question I asked Luke. Does Dennis Allen still have a grip on this locker room, in your opinion?
I think the locker room, yes. In terms of whether the team and the rest of the season, I don't know for sure. I mean, like Luke said, I heard, it's been a very favorable schedule for them to be 5-6. This was a huge game today. It's one thing to have the guys prepared to play and another to be able to fix these problems. And they keep kind of talking about it over and over. And yet the same things kind of keep happening.
Yeah, Saints offense over 400 yards. As Luke said, after 3 and out on the first drive, they did not punt again in the entire game. They drove inside the Falcons 35 on every single possession, but twice turned it over, settled for, 6 field goal tries, making 5 of them. I think maybe one of the frustrating things is, other than Dennis Allen or Pete Carmichael, there's no one thing you can blame this on. Derek Carr had a bad throw. Jesse Bates made a great play. Other than that, Derek Carr played pretty well, I thought, considering his receivers weren't there. Same thing with the running game. It was pretty good until Taysom Hill fumbles the ball. Protection was pretty good until Landon Young comes in and gives up a sack. And so it's just sort of this all over failure.
Yeah, no, and I mean, I just think the red zone thing, again, the frustrating thing, I imagine for Saints fans, is they had a week to fix this. At least, they did their self-scout. They said, all right, we've identified some things. And you have to look at where did those things really lead. It didn't lead to much. And, for them to be 0-5 in the red zone, I was kind of toying around with this and looking it up. They've had 47 trips to the red zone where they haven't scored a touchdown since 2000. Or 47 games where they've had trips to the red zone and they haven't scored.
Came up empty.
This was the highest game. This was the game that they had the highest attempts. They,
So in other words,
yeah,
in other words,
I'll clean this up for
no red zone. He's a writer. Listen, no red zone scores.
Yes.
And this was the 47th time since the year 2000 that we had no red zone scores for the Saints. And this was the most attempts they had in any of those games.
Yes.
So 0-5 is like a new low.
Yes.
And I mean, look, it was everything. It was just your typical failures where they can't get a guy open or Carr is not willing to take that risk. You had the turnovers. You had the penalties. I mean, it was everything down the line.
Yeah. No, it was. And we haven't even talked defensively. I mean, the run defense being as bad as it was.
228 yards.
Yeah. And Bijan Robinson, I don't think he finished with over 100 yards rushing, but he was close. I think, what was it, 95?
But between him and Algier and Ritter, you didn't need one guy at 100. Let's see what we got here.
No, yeah, it was but just those same problems kind of over and over. I think
Robinson at 91.
Yeah, okay,
yeah,
so
91.
I think
but
Jonathan Taylor had 95. So this is the last few weeks, the run defense has been a lot bigger of a problem than it has been previously.
So 6 games left. The last one's against the Falcons. Again, if Saints can play the Falcons even over the next 5 weeks, that Week 18 game will be for the division, depending on what the Bucs do in there. But if you got to figure the Falcons and Saints, if that's going to be the case, probably both beat the Bucs, eliminate them. Yeah. We'll see what happens. You can't predict anything with this team, but there's still a chance. To the players, they have to cling to that, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. And you hear a lot of the same things after these type of losses. They'll go in on Monday, review the film, see how they do, treat to their injuries. But, it's still a winnable division for the Saints, and that's why they can't completely, melt down after this. Detroit's coming off a loss. They'll be angry. But, besides Detroit, you have the Panthers and the Giants on deck. And, it's a very winnable slate down the stretch, and it's still kind of in their hands. But now the difference with this game is now the Falcons are tied for first place, and they have their chances to make the playoffs are over 50% now.
They also have an easy schedule. So I mean, it's not going to be easy to play the Falcons even. Nothing comes easy for these Saints. We know that. But we do appreciate you being here. Thank you for your vents, your questions, your comments. This has been the Saints Insider Postgame Show. It's brought to you by Tulane Doctors. My thanks to Rod Walker and Luke Johnson for stepping by, and to Matthew Paris, and for Zoe Collins-Rath, who's producing the show for us. Falcons 54, Saints 15. Saints are 5-6. We'll be back with a regular Saints Insider podcast. Try to make sense of it all on Wednesday, man.
Yep.
We'll see you next time.